Welcome back, everyone. And today we are joined by Dan Loveridge of Cinergi.
Welcome
to the show, Dan.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming all the way up. I think you were on the train when I spoke to you this morning.
Long journey, yeah, about 4 or 5 hours, I think it was.
We're doing nothing for our carbon footprint today. We've just had the previous guest also came up from down south. So either we need to move our studio down south, but no, we're not doing that, are we?
I was on the train. It's public transport, so that's one thing.
I was to say, well, there's a bit of carbon footprint there.
There we go. Yeah.
But thank you very much for joining us. So Cinergi, an installer of renewable technologies.
Yep.
Before we get into everything that Cinergi does, which is all about helping homeowners to make that transition to decarbonisation, just tell us a little bit about you. So you're the founder of Cinergi, is that right?
Yeah. So I suppose I started back in, to give you the whole story. Left school, went to college. So I sort of had two groups of friends really. One group did the whole college university route. The other did their apprenticeships and went straight in. I sort of found my way down the middle really. Went to college, did A-levels, sort of kept options open really. Wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Applied to university, got into university, but decided to go down the apprenticeship route.
Okay, cool.
So I joined SSE down in Southampton.
Really?
Yeah, did my apprenticeship there as an electrician. So not mechanical at all. I'm electrical at heart. Was there for 8 years, so sort of progressed. Left there for career progression really, in terms of go and get another job, move on. Left there and joined an M&E company as a site manager. So this was doing projects ranging from sort of £500,000 up to sort of £3.5 million ish, M&E. So
this is mechanical and electrical. This is big commercial grade stuff.
Yeah. So new schools, hospitals, that sort of thing. Universities. So that was looking after everything. So lighting, sound, AV, heating, ventilation, all sorts. The whole sort of built environment as such inside, which works in a building. So did that, and that's really when I first came across this sort of thing, obviously on a larger scale. So big heat pumps, big solar, no batteries. And that's where I sort of came from really. I was in that for about 3.5-ish years and decided don't really fancy working for someone else the rest of my life. Let's go and give it a go.
That's a big leap. That's to decide to go, because that must have been to come from a huge kind of industrial environment to decide you're going to go self-employed. That's brave.
It was, and it was COVID as well, just top it off. So,
So no furlough pay, nothing like that?
No. So it's funny enough, so we're June, aren't we? We're June now.
Yeah.
So end of this month, it was end of June that I registered the company 4 years ago.
Really?
I left my job at the Christmas, so in sort of 6 months' time. So got our sort of ducks in a row, got our insurances and stuff ready and all that jazz, and then made the jump in January. So a bit touchy, obviously with furlough and lockdowns and things like that. But
congratulations, and you're still going strong.
Yeah, it was good. Yeah, it was good, and it's a good type. I mean, I'm electrical, and my dad's mechanical, so he's been a heating engineer all his life.
Oh, excellent.
So he went down the apprenticeship route. He's British Gas, went that way, and then left and had his own company for most of his life. So he came along with us, and off we went. Hence the heat pump route, which is it's a crossover, really.
Well, it's a massive crossover, isn't it? When you find that, the complexity around controls integration, system integration, to really make a heat pump system sing and dance and get the efficiencies and the cost effectiveness from a running cost perspective. You want that kind of whole home system all singing together. So that experience you would have had on the commercial side of things and bringing mechanical and electrical both together, that's it's something that we certainly, when we talk to installers that it may be more traditionally in the residential space, you'll have electricians and you'll have heating engineers, and they do have a bit of a crossover on some areas of the jobs. But actually bringing those together, well, Cinergi is bringing them together, isn't it?
That's where it came from, really. Trying to get all these things working together, and we spent hours sat there. I remember exactly where I was when a few thought of the name. I sat in my armchair in my living room on the phone to my dad. And we're like, okay, Cinergi, does that exist? And then we've got the domain, all that jazz.
Fantastic.
You do. And then off you go. So, but that's interesting. And also, I was going to say that, the conventional heat pump system, a bit controversial these days. We talk about buffers and low loss headers, all that jazz. Yeah. They're very much large commercial systems, just shrunk right down. Yeah. So whereas your conventional boiler type systems, your wipe out and S-plan type things are very domestic, coming from that sort of commercial side, it was quite interesting, really. Sort of gave me that insight.
Of course, yeah, especially if you're working with more kind of blown air type systems in commercial applications, actually applying it to residential homes and the challenges that come with residential homes with systems that have been tweaked and changed and integrated over time.
Yeah.
And so what is, when we talk about Cinergi, what does it do? What can you offer to a homeowner?
So I suppose, it's the whole customer journey really, and it sounds all cliche to say, doesn't it really? But I think we really do know what we're talking about when it comes to all this stuff. We've been in the industry for a little bit now, so it's really holding that customer's hand from the start. Some people join us. When I say join us, come to us like from a client side. They know a lot about these systems. Some people know absolutely nothing, and it's sort of tailoring that journey from there onwards to hold their hand all the way through. Do they want a heat pump? Is it the right system for them in the first place? How do they couple that? How can they enhance their savings or energy savings, whichever they're looking to do? So most of what we do is heat pumps, and we don't really want to deviate from that. What makes us different in terms of our company is say 70% of what we do is heat pumps. 20% is probably solar and batteries, with the remaining sort of 10% being things like underfloor heating, MVHR, all these technologies we sort of bolt on. So I think where we differ is, you come to us, whether you've got a 3-bed semi down the road and you want to change your gas boiler to a heat pump, we can help you. If you've got a 20-bed mansion in Surrey and you want to put heat pumps, solar, batteries and all this stuff on your house, we can have a look. So sort of that tailored approach really. That's where we come in. And
where do you, so when you find people coming to you, what tends to be the majority? What's the biggest driver for them? Is it a planned change? I'm thinking about going for a heat pump, or are they ringing you up in a panic? My boiler's broken down and I've got no heat or hot water.
Generally speaking, most people who approach us are considering heat pump. So it's quite a considered move. Of course, we do get some that call up and in a bit of a panic that their boiler's broken and what do they do? Obviously, that's like a bit of a challenge when it comes to heat pumps, and it's not turning up 2 days later with a boiler and taking a day to change it over, as you know. So, but yeah, most projects we do are quite planned and considered. And again, that's anything from retrofit to new build. Obviously, new build, I say that you should have a long time to think about things. Sometimes builders don't leave it that long. And want you there last minute. But yeah, I'd say that most of the time it's quite a considered approach.
And is it a driver of energy savings, or is it a driver of environmental impact, or a little bit of both?
I'd say most of our, we do get both. Obviously, we do get both. Went to a house the other day, stunning house, and his motive was purely financial. He wanted to know. He wanted his. Well, he was telling me originally he's got a 3-phase 100 amp supply. Sorry, and he wanted something like 150 kilowatts of solar. I said, realistically, we're not going to be able to do that because of restrictions and whatnot. So we scaled it in. But what he wanted was pure financial savings. So he wanted to know when it was going to pay for itself, and would his money perform better doing that effectively than him investing it somewhere else. So that was pure financial.
That's an interesting driver, isn't it? Because I have to admit, we've had similar conversations with people, and that kind of starts to put an element of pressure on the company supplying this stuff, that the customer coming to you is not asking for they're asking for financial advice, because your job is mechanical, electrical. You're going to make this system design and work. But actually you're being asked to be able to predict the financial return based on a huge range of factors, from weather conditions, usage patterns,
100%.
Performance factors. The financial model behind that would make some of the biggest financiers in the world start to reel back about feeling confident around it. So being asked to do that at a level where your job is to, as from a mechanical and electrical perspective, is a big challenge.
And obviously, like I said, it's a tricky one, because obviously what we'll never do, and to us, maybe sometimes we're too far on the safe side, but we'll always err on the side of caution. We say this is the figures, what we think it's going to do. This random generation, you go away and model it how you want to model it. But we'll always be quite conservative in what we promise, because we want to over deliver on that and not leave someone disappointed. But
and I guess that's because fundamentally a lot of this comes down to the fact that to have it, if your driver is purely financial, and as you say, there's people out there who do this from an environmental perspective as well. But if your driver is purely financial, then what you're saying is, if I put this money in, when am I going to get it back, and when am I going to start to see returns on that investment through savings? Whereas if it's environmental, you're essentially offsetting your carbon footprint, which is still equally challenging to calculate, but it carries a lot less risk than
it does.
It's equally a messy world when you consider how much of that electricity came from renewable sources and how much of it came from I suppose if you're buying electricity from fully renewable
supplier.
But it's a challenging ask of an engineering company, because I suppose if you were going out there touting this, but actually if people are coming to you saying, I would like a quote, but I also want you to provide me with a financial summary at the end of this stuff.
It's quite interesting. But then I love that side in a way. It's quite interesting. The sort of different projects we look at, can be really quite interesting. But I'd say that's quite a minority, which is purely financial driven. I'd say most of our customers really are doing it. They're able to pay customers. They've got some spare money around and they don't mind investing some of that money in being a bit greener. So whereas a new boiler or replacement boiler might cost them say £3,000, £3 or £4,000, they don't mind spending £8,000 of their own cash after the grant, for example, for to be that bit greener. And that's probably where most of our business lies, is in that sort of market. It's quite rare that people come to us and say, look, I'm only doing this to save money. And to be honest, if they are doing it to save money, then generally speaking, don't put heat pump in.
Yeah, it's true.
Depending on tariffs and batteries and solar, and of course it's possible, but
I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Actually, when you combine, if you look at a heat pump in isolation, on its own, the running costs against a traditional gas system, they end up washing their face. That's about it.
Yeah.
But actually, when you combine it with solar, battery, smart tariffs, optimization, and everything that comes with it, they do start to become a pretty compelling argument. But actually, you've got a big upfront capital cost to cover on the way through.
Yeah.
But do you find with when somebody's coming to you and it's an environmental driver that's getting them up in the morning, they tend to be more affluent clients?
Yeah. Probably generally speaking. But then, but on quite a large sort of spectrum of people, we fit heat pumps and solar batteries on, like I said, on anything ranging from your terraced house up to your big multi-million-pound mansions type thing. So I'd most of them probably do like the sort of 3 or 4 bedroom detached house size. It's probably most common. But
it's quite an interesting one when we've seen it before when we've kind of done that comparison against the retrofit of a replacement boiler, for instance, and we've had everything. We've heard everything back on this show from kind of, I can do a boiler for £1,500 through to people who charge £6,000 for a boiler.
Yeah.
But I suppose a lot of that comes down to A, the system that you're integrating into, and B, the size of the property that you're up against. Because if it was a kind of 2-bed, 3-bed semi, and you're up against somebody who is essentially taking a combi off the wall and refitting a replacement, that probably is going to end up being at the lower end of those cost scales.
Yeah.
Whereas, as you say, if you're dealing with maybe a more affluent client in a bigger house, then you'll probably find that actually you're in a position where the cost to replace a boiler starts to becoming comparable to having a heat pump when you consider you get the grant that comes along with it. Yeah.
And I suppose it all depends what that homeowner's up against. We come across a lot of people who, you go to them and okay, their heating system may well be pressurised, but they've still got a cylinder and loft and their hot water's open vented. So, they got terrible hot water pressure.
Of course,
So
the drivers become different.
Yeah, exactly. And then, suddenly when you start talking about new boiler, new hot water cylinder, changing to unvented, it all pushes those costs up. So it's not necessarily always just putting a heat pump in terms of cost comparison anyway.
That's it. Yeah, it's interesting because you say you're comparing it against somebody who is actually already facing a system upgrade in their home anyway.
Yeah.
And what would be if you had a magic wand and you could the biggest, you could get rid of the biggest challenge that homeowners face to having the technology installed, which in turn would increase the amount of installations that you do. What is the biggest barrier that you find that faces homeowners, but in turn means that maybe you're not doing as many installations as you could do?
I think there's probably 2 things, if one had to say 2 things.
Yeah, as many as possible.
I think, and one of them is barrier to actually looking at it in the first place, in that I think there's an awful I say an awful, there's a lot of misinformation out there and a lot of things about heat pumps. They don't work. We need a small one insulated house for them to work, various things. So I'd say education is probably number one, and making people aware that, these things do work. People in Europe have been installing them for years now, and they're not shivering in cold.
Yeah.
So, they can work. I think two is once you've got someone interested and they've inquired about a heat pump, it's really that running cost comparison and the whole, levies that are on electricity versus on gas and that sort of thing. If we were to see a shift in balances like that, then I think that would be see a huge change in industry. Albeit you've got to be a very brave government to do it, because you're going to put everyone's gas bill up.
Well, I think this is the bit that sometimes baffles me with it. That first of all, I think that kind of if you were to bring those two things into a real life situation where we talk about confidence in the fact that these technologies work, we've got 350,000 heat pumps now in the UK, and I think I was in the same place as you. I've used that statement around people in Scandinavia have been having these systems fitted for years, but now there's people in the UK that have had these systems fitted for years.
Yeah, there was. Yeah,
and we've just had Paul on the show, and he's gone now 12 months from having a heat pump installation. His house is warm. His running costs are down. It's done the job, and then I think, well, if we should be showcasing these people, we should be making real case studies about these people to show. And I know some of the manufacturers do it, and I know some of the, and I know certainly on things like the Energy Saving Trust promotes some of those things. But the more we fit, and the more positive experiences customers have, and the more that message gets out there. And I always go back. There was one story of an engineer that operated where I first started out over in North Wales, and he would go around and he would tell everybody heat pumps don't work. And in North Wales, a lot of the homes were on oil.
Right. Okay.
And he would go around and he would say that heat pumps don't work. And when there was, I fitted an installation in the neighbour's house, and they now had an installation that worked. And then this neighbour contacted him, and he told them the story, heat pumps don't work. And they were able to go, no, the neighbour's got one. Same house, same major build, costing this, running costs are now this. So actually, if you arm the consumers with the right rhetoric and the right messaging,
100%.
they can combat the negativity around the technology. So those positive stories from companies like yourself who are generating these installations, I think is so important. And I actually think on the levy side of things, there's things that the government could do that would actually incentivize electricity in period without necessarily having to put everybody's gas prices up.
Yeah.
We've seen it with the energy price cap. Actually, if they just said, right, anybody who goes for a heat pump, or if you're on a heat pump tariff with an energy supplier, we're going to supplement that for a period of time whilst to encourage more people to make that leap.
Yeah.
And then eventually the laggards, the people who maybe, sit there and say, no, I'm going to burn gas regardless and I don't care. And eventually those people will get hit.
Yeah.
But there's got to be something we can do to really see this transition. And where are you finding the costs sitting for consumers?
In terms of installation costs?
Yeah.
It can vary again massively. I think generally I'd say most of our jobs, post bus grant, are probably the sort of £6,000 to £8,000 mark ish.
Okay.
Again, most of what we install are like sort of valent heat pumps. So it's at the more expensive end of the market. We have done some. I know someone in the office called me the other day and said, look, we just done a quote. It seems a bit wrong in a way because it's for it's a new build and they wanted to check it, but it's about £300 after the grant. So yes, it is obviously a big difference between new build and retrofit. In time wise and material wise and things like that. But that's where we sort of roughly where we are.
That's even that if you talk through so I've been in heat pumps since 2010. Well, 2005 when I started in heat pumps.
Yeah.
But I think back to 2014 when the renewable heat incentive was first kind of brought out. And even if you look at installations that were going in 2020, 2021, and the average cost of an installation could have been anywhere between £12,000 to £20,000.
Yeah.
And okay, there was the incentive then that paid back quarterly after that point.
Yeah.
But to be at a place now where we're talking about maybe high-end installations being £4,000 to £6,000, it's still a chunk of cash, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's nowhere near where it used to be. And then in situations like you say there, where new builds, where actually all the radiator pipe work is already in, maybe the hot water cylinder is even already in, and actually you're just replacing. I suppose in that case, actually, you would probably still be replacing the hot water cylinder. Likely. But it is starting to get to that place where there is some scenarios where the cost is cheaper than fitting a replacement boiler.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I think it was only last week I was chatting to a customer, and they're building it's a big new build house. The heat loss was about 13, 14 kilowatts, so decent sized new build. And we were looking at at its options, so gas versus heat pump really. And there was a certain manufacturer which you do install, and it was literally quit. So he was saying, look, cards on the table, a boiler and a cylinder from his plumber doing the work in his house was going to be about the £6,000 mark. And I turned the page to our option number 2 of our proposal, and it was £6,000. So he was like, oh, okay, in which case I may as well get a heat pump, hadn't I?
Yeah. Especially if you take into consideration when you're making that choice, the journey that the UK is going on from an energy security perspective, and we're trying to decarbonize our homes, which means electricity will be becoming more incentivized. And the minute you fit that installation, just as Paul was talking about earlier on the previous show, it gives you access to more innovative tariffs. When you start going down the route of adding solar into the equation and battery storage into the equation, you can
do everything.
You can do everything.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah,
and you guys can do that whole thing. If I whether I came to you in stages, whether I said, well, okay, heat pump now, or I want the whole lot in one go. A homeowner could come to you and either have it all in one go or have it staged over time.
Yeah, definitely. And we're not, we're here and we've sort of positioned ourselves for the long game. We're not here to make a lot of money in the next 2 years and then disappear. We're here to, we want to be here on that journey. And we have many customers that come in and say, look, I can't afford solar now, but what would it look like if I did do solar? And we'll model it. Let's have a look. That's roughly what it's going to cost for your budget in the future, and away you go. And obviously we believe in it. I mean, on my house is 1910s. So cavity wall, solid floors, no insulation, that sort of build. And we got a heat pump, solar PV and batteries, electric car. Well, and we do all of it, and we believe in it. So,
you live it. That's the point. You're not only fitting it, but what a great way to be able to demonstrate to a customer who's not necessarily sure whether maybe they've heard the negative stories about it. And I try and always do this whenever we're on the show and we have somebody that's kind of lived and breathed it, because I would say, and Hannah's here with us today, our social media expert, will be able to tell me the amount of comments that we get saying heat pumps don't work.
Yeah.
And it'll just be a one-liner, whether it's on a TikTok account or on an Instagram account, it'll just be heat pumps don't work. Yeah. And it's like, no, like you've got one.
Yeah.
And it works.
It does 100%. And to be honest, so we moved into our house, 2019 we moved in, and it needed some work to it. We redid it. We had an really old oil boiler in there, predates me easily, proper old thing. And we took that out and put a new oil boiler in, changed all the radiators to nice new column ones, and decorated the house, all that jazz. And then about 18 months later, we're like, right, we're doing this now. We need to, I can't be going to Mrs. Smith down the road and saying you need to put a heat pump in when I'm at home burning oil. Yeah. So took the boiler out, put the heat pump in, changed no radiators at all. So this was back in RHI days, so I don't know how long I've had that now, sort of 3 or 4 years. Didn't change any radiators. My little boy, George, was born literally at that time. So, just a couple months old. And I, fearful the house would be a bit chilly. I set the system up initially on 55 flow with weather comp. House was fine, breezed it. Turned it down to 50 degrees, breezed it was fine. Turned down to 45, breezed it was fine. Turned down to 40 and it struggled. Yeah. There's something really cold January morning, sort of -6 outside. It was chilly. So I turned it back up to 45 and it's been there ever since.
What a great way to, because this is one of the challenges, and I'm sure you come across it as well in your installations, is that actually if you do these calculations if you do the designs but purely based on the calculations that are in front of you, you can end up in a situation where you're replacing radiators that never need to be replaced. Yep. And actually if we're on this journey from an environmental perspective, ripping these things out when they're perfectly good and doing the job. And I think the more we can start to engage with homeowners to say, we absolutely know these radiators are going to need to be replaced. These ones fit into maybe an amber category of ones to be monitored. Let's put it in, let's run it. And then if you find that, we can come and replace that one or that one. There seems to be an argument and a rhetoric around the VAT aspect of that. Well, if you come back and replace that radiator now, then you're not going to get the VAT back on that. So, well, yeah, but I mean,
in the grand scheme of things, the radiators aren't, going back to changing the radiator isn't going to.
No, it's not a big job. It's going to take a couple of hours, and actually, yeah, you lose the VAT on a couple of radiators on the way through. But if the alternative is to massively on the side of caution and replace every radiator in the house, or 70-80% of the radiators in the house, then you're definitely spending more on that system than you're going to save on the VAT.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting example. So you put this system in, didn't touch the radiators, let it run, and then see what it came out on the other side.
Yeah. Again, well, to be completely transparent, the back half of the house was heated by an Arga.
Oh, okay.
So it's obviously that got disconnected. We put a big radiator in there, so that's a big, I don't know, 1800 by 700 K3, so big. That's the only one we put in at the time. And then when we moved my son's bedroom about a year ago, he had one of the old single panel radiators in his bedroom. His was the only room we hadn't changed. So when we changed his, we made sure it was the right size by the calcs.
Why not?
So 2 rads out of 10 or 12 have changed. The rest are exactly as they were.
And that must have made a big difference in terms of, I appreciate even if you're doing it yourself, you've still got to buy the materials and you've still got to source or provide the labour. You're still going to be paying somebody to be doing that stuff. So it still makes sense to try and do it in a cost-effective manner. And I think it's also a massive barrier for homeowners as well. If you think the level of inconvenience, it can be a hard enough transition to convince somebody to make this leap without saying to somebody, we're going to completely rip your house apart and put all this stuff in. So enabling some of that journey and being a bit more innovative, maybe with the calculation methods to say, well, actually, if we design this system at a higher temperature and let's actually then see what it runs. I think Paul was saying he designed his system in the end about 55, and I think he said it, even in the depths of winter, it never went above 47, 48.
Yeah.
So there's definitely fat in those calculations that can be starting to be, maybe erring on the side of caution to allow those things to happen.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a good. Well, we think it's a good approach to have. Let's deal with these things. Let's say you're going to take the wall down between your kitchen and your living room at home. The size of that steel you put in that ceiling will take 3 times the weight. Let's say 3 or 4 times the weight. And I'm not saying there's that much meat in the calcs when it comes to heat loss and heating design, but of course there's a buffer. Mm-hmm. So why not take a bit more of a common sense, real world approach and say, look, how does your house work with this system and your heating, your heating needs, your heating cycle? Are you in? Are you out? Are you at home all the time? And let's see how you get on, and then dress it as a bit of a staged thing.
Well, we've touched on what would make more customers have the technology. We talked about the tariffs around electricity and making that easier. What would make, from your perspective, what would make your life easier? What would make fitting more heat pumps easier? Forgetting that if you had a you may already have this, a queue of customers lined up.
Yeah.
What do you find are the hardest parts of your job that make fitting heat pumps more difficult?
We hadn't really come across it up until quite lately, where the whole planning side of things. Mm. So in terms of permitted development, in terms of sound and those sorts of things, but it just seems to be the last 6 months, and it's probably pure luck. And I'm sure no policy has changed in the last 6 months, particularly in that direction. But we've had a couple lately where they've been turned down. So they've gone and applied. Local council said no, you can't have that. Or you can't put it there. You can't do this. That's too loud. Which just seems crazy to me. Crazy in this day and age that we're pushing these sorts of things. We're taking out. I remember one happened about a month ago. So nice, 4-bedroom sort of chalet bungalow house type thing. External wall board on the side of the house, and about 3 meters to the boundary, 3 meters the other side is the next house. It failed on noise, and they said no heat pump.
And again, there's fat in those noise calculations that an oil boiler sat there gurgling away. These are challenges that they get in the way, and they say there's probably time and effort that's gone into that customer. If you've got to the point where you've whether it's failed that inspection, failed that, you've gone and done calculations in order to size the heat pump. How are you finding? We found this one quite as something that comes up quite a lot on this show around the if a customer gets to the point of their boiler's broken down.
Yeah.
You mentioned that a lot of your customers are more in a planned stage, but do you find that ability for them to get sufficient enough electricity to supply to the home in order for it to meet the requirements for having a heat pump? Is that a barrier that...
Not really in terms of their final decision, in terms of DNO saying no. We rarely come across that, really. But it does take time. and the different DNOs are very different. Down where we are, I won't name any names. Down where we are, the DNO there is notoriously slow.
Really?
You go a bit east, and you'll have an answer in 2 weeks versus sort of 3 months. So that is a hindrance. It is a hindrance. Obviously, that's on the sort of larger side of heat pumps. But yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say it's a huge barrier.
Do you find
it's just another barrier? And there's several barriers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and each of them takes a
bit of time. It just knocks it all on.
Do you have to? Do you find many houses needing the upgrade, or is it more a case of waiting for the paperwork to be processed?
Most of it's just paperwork exercise. Yeah, we find. Yeah. And unless you're at a very big system, or find out with the customer who confirmed their order to us on Friday, they're going, well, heat pump on the house, heat pump on the annex, solar everywhere, and they want as many batteries as they're allowed, basically. And they said, look, what should we do power supply wise? And I said 3-phase.
Yeah.
If and you're going to the extent of the works, you're rebuilding the house, you're digging up everywhere. Let's get a price for 3-phase and upgrade. Just open so many doors to you. There isn't that many people that we find do need that upgrade, but of course it does happen, and it does. It opens so many doors for you in the future, doesn't it? If you've got that sort of level of power.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's an expensive, to go up to 3-phase even. Again, I suppose it depends on the where the house is and the surrounding properties and things like that.
Yeah, it can be, but again, that can vary quite a lot. So we've done a property down. There's 2 big Hitachi units, a full new heating system in this house, a big sort of manor house type thing. They upgraded 3-phase, and I think it's about 900 quid.
Really?
Because overhead line pulled in, dropped it in, they finished.
Oh, because it was already there.
Yeah.
I've seen ones on the other side where they've gone, to get 3-phase. Yeah. We had it was a big barn conversion, and I've got off the top of my head, I think it was something like they wanted to charge. It was something like £5,000 a kilometre or something.
Really?
And they were 3 kilometres away from the 3-phase line. So to get 3-phase to that house, the house needed a 3-phase heat pump. So to actually get 3-phase to the house, in order for them to be 100% on the heat pump, they would have had to.
I'd say 3-phase for that sort of money. Yeah.
And this was in the days where, under the renewable heat incentive, where if you didn't do that, you were metered on your supply.
Yeah.
So they were saying, well, the risk then is you don't get as much return back on your incentives.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But it's a challenge.
We had one the other day where it was down near us in the New Forest, and their quote for 3-phase was 23 grand because of the length of the dig down the lane, down to pick up the joint, I suppose. But we went back to them, and the builder said, look, we'll do all the groundwork. You tell us what you need. And they revised their cost. I think it's about 3 or 4 grand.
But still, you're going to be paying.
Difference.
Yeah, you're going to be paying the builder a chunk of cash.
Instead.
It won't be as much.
It's not free. No, of course.
Yeah,
but it's an interesting one with DNOs. It's a tricky one.
And it can be a painful process, especially if there's the time. But it sounds like from more of your work is in those areas where, because it's a planned purchase, whether it's a large scale renovation or a new build home, they're part of those considerations anyway. I guess getting the supply in. Yeah. And where you see maybe some of the challenges you've got in terms of just the process. You're coming at this from a commercial background, so I imagine you've done a lot of this stuff before. But if you were to take, your average heating engineer that's thinking about stepping into the world of renewables, what does that look like for them? Is this if you were coming from fitting boilers every day to starting to fit heat pumps, is this an easy transition, or is it going to be a painful adoption process for somebody to move into?
That's one thing I think we've always, touch wood, done pretty well on. It is our engineers. All of our guys are spot on, and looking back, one person we've employed had previous heat pump experience. The rest have all been heat engineer, and then we've converted them as such. So I think done in the right way and given the training, the support, and the backup which they need, I don't personally see that as a big barrier to us. Obviously, if you're talking the sort of numbers that Octopus are employing and that sort of thing, then obviously upskilling becomes quite a big thing. But I think it's sort of I think we're looking to take on say 3 or 4 in the next 12 months, as part of our growth. The engineering side seems to be okay.
But what about from your perspective, actually running the company? So, if you were to take, if you were prior to heat pumps, you were guy in a van driving around fitting boilers, doing 3 or 4 services a day, and the odd replacement here and there, to go from there to being an MCS accredited contractor. with all the compliance and regulatory pieces and everything that come with that, is that a big step, you know, from a one-man band in a van to being a firm doing this?
Quite possibly, and I think a lot of people do see that as a big barrier. You know, we speak to a lot of, you know, plumbers and things who are working on these sites, you know, alongside us, or you know, they're doing something different there. And the whole MCS thing and the paperwork thing is a barrier for them. We don't personally see it as being that bad, if I'm being honest with you. I think, you know, but I suppose we've sort of grown, and at the time you put the hours in, the extra time in to make sure you do the paperwork in your own time. Now we've got, you know, back office team who deal with all of that, and it's all pretty seamless and pretty okay, to be honest.
Yeah, I suppose once you have it's just, I always think it's a little bit of a leap, you know, especially if you're coming that from a kind of more traditional kind of residential plumbing and heating. You know, you got your gas safe notifications, but other than that, you know, there isn't a huge amount of paperwork.
No.
So, and then, you know, we see that kind of journey from there through to having full quality management systems in place, complaints procedures, forms, documentation, everything you've got to fill out. That can be quite a daunting leap from an industry perspective. And
drastically.
It's always interesting to think, you know, when we talk about the kind of the scale of the challenge, you know, for decarbonisation, the UK wide, you know, especially around this challenge around heating, to really get to that place, we're going to hopefully soon start to see the transition from maybe more bigger homes having this technology and more widespread adoption and get into those kind of that whole boiler replacement world. But if you were to go from kind of where you're at now, doing these, not say completely specialist installations, but that world, if somebody clicked their fingers tomorrow and all of a sudden this was mass market and you were able to go and do 200 installations a month, what do you think the barriers are from be it from a consumer's perspective or an industry perspective that really need to be tackled to go from kind of, you know, I don't know how many installations you do a month now, but if it was to go to 200 installations a month, what does that leap look like?
It's a tricky one, isn't it? I think I don't know if I'm just optimistic on that front. I always think operationally, engineer-wise, people-wise, we could do it. I honestly do believe the people are there, and if you've got your procedures and processes set up right, and you've got the people to oversee that work, you know, it's possible. I think the biggest opposition we face as the industry is the market itself and the consumers, making sure they know what they're looking at, making sure they know it's a viable option, and sort of thinking ahead. You know, we get some people approach us and say April, saying, "Oh, you know, we're going to park heat pump until the heating season starts, then we'll think about it." So no, like, please don't do that. Let's do it now while your heating's not on and not have all those pressures.
Yeah.
I think so much of it's just education and just making people aware of it. You know, I come across so many people still, and they say, "Oh, you know, what do you do?" And you just explain and say, "Well, what's a heat pump? I don't know what a heat pump is."
Yeah.
You know, people don't know, and if they do, probably 50% of those think they don't work.
Yeah, that is such a negative rhetoric that runs around heat pump systems, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you have to, and in all honesty, it's sometimes you kind of, I don't know. I've spoken to enough engineers in my time, specifically in the heat pump world, and you do get to the point you go, "Well, this isn't my job." You know, why is your job when you're facing the competition, being a gas engineer whose only job it is to go and replace that gas boiler? Why, you know, whereas with a heat pump, you've actually got to educate, you've got to convince, and that all comes with time, and time is money, and therefore you're bound to charge a little bit more for your installation than a traditional boiler would cost. Yeah, definitely. It's
it's interesting, and you get different motives. You know, we're doing one at the moment, and you know, lovely family where they got the, you know, son and the daughter and the kids moving in with the grandparents, all bought a big house, basically splitting the house in two and extending it, but they want to be green. So on that, we're putting solar. We're putting solar in, but battery ready, not batteries just yet, budget wise. The mother, daughter, and the kids, so that element of the family, that generation wanted heat pumps. The older generation wanted a boiler.
Yeah,
you know, 2 heat pumps would have done it. It would have been fine. They've opted for a compromise and going 1 heat pump, 1 boiler.
Really?
Yeah, just to keep both, you know, everyone happy. But of course, doing that means no grant. You know, a similar amount of work goes into it. Obviously, it's heat pump ready. You know, I say heat pump ready. You know, a full heat pump ready. You know, we're redesigning the system, make sure the rads are sized correctly, underfloor heating's done correctly.
Is this a case of if it doesn't work, we've got a backup then? Yeah.
Exactly that. exactly that. I mean, we sat there and went through, and our heating systems do work. Trust me, they do work. Look at our reviews, look at everything. It will work. But no,
because the argument you could go about the other way and say, well, what if the boiler doesn't work?
Yeah,
it's like they know the boiler. There is I say, unfortunately, it does still have this feel of it's new technology when I say it's tried and tested, and
and people often think, oh, you get a power cut, your heat pump doesn't work, but nor does your boiler. So there's so many little things out there, and okay, once you explain that, people realise. But there's so many little things that. Yeah, which isn't a problem, and that's part that we quite enjoy, really, speaking to these people, explaining it. I went out to them, we sat down in their sort of living room that was all cut to pieces because they hadn't had to work in, like a conference type thing. They all sat there and we went through, answered all their questions, and they enjoyed it and loved the support. But that journey is quite interesting, and everyone's slightly different. They've all got slightly different questions.
And it's an important one to do, isn't it? And one probably if they'd have gone down the boiler route, they probably wouldn't have had that same level of interaction from the boiler engineer, because you haven't got to sit there in front of a committee of a family and convince them that the boiler's gonna do its job. So it does take a particular type of person, a particular type of organisation that's willing to go and put that time and effort in, because that time and effort is not necessarily being spent doing an installation, overseeing an installation, overseeing running the business. That is essentially, I mean, it's sales to a point. You're having to go in there and it's technical, but you're conveying, building confidence in people to actually invest in the technology. What is it that makes Cinergi unique? What do you think if we were to ask, one of your customers why they chose you over somebody else?
Yeah, I suppose it's a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because I mean, I know why, but it's hard to. I'm quite a modest person. I don't really I just think we're very good at what we do, if I'm being honest. And we do genuinely care. There's obviously me. I own the company. My dad's heavily involved. He's he's Mr. Heating, he's Mr. Technical. He knows everything there is about heating systems. My sister works in accounts. Like, everyone's got a properly vested interest in how this goes, and
so nice.
No one wants anyone to be unhappy. Of course we have problems. Everyone has problems. You wouldn't be doing any sort of manual work if you didn't have the occasional problem. But I think it's how you deal with it, and everyone needs to end up happy at the end of the day, and that's ultimately what we do.
And those problems that you'd come across, you'll have them with boiler installations, you'll have them with electrical upgrades in the home. So these aren't unique to the technology, but as you say, it's ultimately down to the reputation and the people within the company of how they deal with it. So I think that's a massive factor, actually a family factor, where you all you all carry that responsibility. Because I think any business, whether they are directly family, through blood, or whether you get that business to operate like a family and everybody's pushing and shoving in the same direction, that's massively important.
Yeah. So. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. And look around the team, and I think there's 24, 25 of us now, and genuinely everyone's brilliant, everyone's spot on, everyone's pushing in the same direction. And okay, we don't have a table tennis table and stuff in the staff room or anything like that. We're not that size yet, we can't do that, but genuinely everyone cares so much, and everyone wants to deliver it well and deliver good work, and it just feels passionate about what they do. So.
And where do you see Cinergi going? You mentioned you've got a kind of idea in your head of the recruitment plan. Where would, if we were to have you back on the show in 5 years' time, what do you hope Cinergi looks like then?
Oh, I don't know. It's tricky, isn't it? Bigger. It's tricky, because I suppose you sort of reach. I don't know I guess you will at some point reach saturation point in the area you are. Mm-hmm. How much bigger can we get in that area before you need another office or things like this? But I don't want to change drastically what we do. There might be some other services that we're thinking about in the background, which we might bring in to support. There's also talk about, installer networks and umbrella schemes and things like that these days. And I think you've got to do that very right to do it correctly, and also protect your reputation and protect your brand as well. So there's various things we're looking at into bringing in. But we want to grow. We want to grow steadily and grow properly and maintain our reputation, really.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. As you can, plenty of people kind of get overexcited and start rushing through the journey, and then end up, as you say, negative perception on the business, negative reputation on the business. So it's slow, steady growth, and I think the industry could do with more companies like yourself coming in, and hopefully we start to see some of that natural navigation from M&E contractors, because ultimately these are systems that do need that kind of multi-skilled approach. And hopefully we do see more coming through, because say in the commercial world, this technology isn't scary. It's not new. It's actually being used in those applications on a regular basis. And okay, slightly different application into a residential property, but actually not that much of a big difference, and probably simpler in a lot of cases.
It's all physics, isn't it? You work out how much energy you need in that property to keep it warm. You make sure the heat pump's big enough to inject that energy, and make sure the emitters are large enough to extract it and keep you warm.
Yeah.
If you balance both sides of the system, it's simple, isn't it?
You're away.
Off you go.
And how does somebody find Cinergi if they were looking for you?
So Google, I suppose, is the biggest way. We come in our way. But
what's the web address?
Google, so www.cinergi.co.uk, but it's spelled funny. So make sure you remember it.
Cinergi.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the region you operate in?
So we're based in Southampton, just outside Southampton in Romsey. So about a 50-mile radius. So sort of so umbrella from sort of Brighton up to Oxford down to Weymouth area.
Oh, you're in Graham Hendricks territory down that way.
That's it, we know Graham.
Oh God,
Freedom Heat Pumps zone, isn't it? Southampton. Yeah.
So you didn't get we didn't have the turkey to air heat pump, which was what the coin Graham phrased when he was explaining how a heat pump works. He was telling us that you put a turkey into the fridge and the turkey's warm, and then it extracts the heat from the turkey and puts it to outside. So you could say a fridge is a turkey to air heat pump. I'm still trying to work that.
I guess it's true.
Yes.
I guess it's true, but it's another way.
I don't know whether you've made the explanation of a heat pump any more simpler than it was before.
No. But yeah, it's interesting.
Graham's a big fan of the show, and he's been on here.
Yeah, he was on here recently, wasn't he?
Yes, yeah. We're due to get him back on again, I think, at some point. He's always a good guest, Carl. Well, thank you very much. We are going to do a follow-up to this, maybe just talk a little bit around some of the installations that you've done more recently, and how maybe the technology has progressed. But it's been great to understand a little bit more about Cinergi and the work you've done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us, everyone, and we'll catch you again soon.